Okay, so in this lesson, we're going to be talking about sexual reproduction and meiosis. When you take a look at the picture that's here, you'll notice each and every one of these. It's like a photo of modern art. This actually is an image, though, of plant cells. And the cells are dividing. Notice, especially this one here, you can tell. And these down here, you can tell. They're dividing by a process that occurs during production of sex cells. Okay, so that's our theme that we're talking about is sexual reproduction and meiosis. Some key things you need to look for or watch, writing these down in your science journal, please. These 3 key concept questions. What is sexual reproduction and why is it beneficial? The second one, what is the order of the phases of meiosis and what happens during each phase? And the last one, why is meiosis important? Okay, the other things we need to pay attention to are the vocabulary words. Quite a few this time. You're going to need to make sure you're writing the word, and when we come across the information in the reading or in the video, you need to pause it and write the definition. Those need to be put in your science journal as we go. First one, sexual reproduction. Sexual reproduction is, of course, one of the titles of our lesson. The next one is egg. The next one is sperm. Fertilization. Zygote. Diploid, haploid, homologous chromosomes, and meiosis. These are all vocabulary words that need to go in your science journal. Please go ahead and stop the video, write the words, and leave space so that you can write their definition after that. Okay? Next part to this, we have a couple of words or a couple of things I want to ask you. You may write both of these down, please, and answer to the best of your ability these 2 questions. What kind of cells do you think meiosis produces? Diploid or haploid? And actually I call it diploid, but it's diploid, D-I-P-L-O-I-D, or haploid. The next one you'll need to write down and answer is what are other terms for sex cells? Okay, those 2 things. Those 2 questions need to be written down. Okay.
What is sexual reproduction? Have you ever seen a litter of kittens? One kitten might have orange fur like its mother. A second kitten might have gray fur like its father. Still another kitten might look like a combination of both parents. How is this possible? The kittens look different because of sexual reproduction. Sexual reproduction is a type of reproduction in which the genetic materials from 2 different cells combine, producing an offspring. The cells that combine are called sex cells. Sex cells form in reproductive organs. The female sex cell, an egg, forms in an ovary. The male sex cell, a sperm, forms in a testis. During a process called fertilization, an egg cell and a sperm cell join together. This produces a new cell. The new cell that forms from fertilization is called a zygote. As shown in Figure 1, the zygote develops into a new organism.
Okay, and with that information about the mother and the father, the sex cells being the egg and the sperm, combining together to fertilize or make fertilization, producing a zygote, which after meiosis and cell division produces a cat, another feline off of the 2 cells that were provided. Okay, so now we're going to take a look at your vocab word, sexual reproduction. Sexual reproduction is a type of reproduction in which the genetic material from 2 different cells combine, producing an offspring, just like our example with the two cats. Go ahead, pause the video, write the definition, please. Okay. Once you're done, we'll start again. I'm going to go ahead and make this small. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and make this large. And here's some more definitions that you need to write down. Okay, the egg is the female sex cell and forms in the ovary. The male sex cell is the sperm and it forms in the testes. Okay, during a process called fertilization, an egg cell and a sperm cell join together. This produces a new cell. The new cell that forms from the fertilization is called a zygote. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4. You have 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 definitions that you need to write down. Go ahead, pause the video, make sure you're writing those definitions. Okay? And then start the video back up again. All right.
Diploid cells. Following fertilization, a zygote goes through mitosis and cell division. These processes produce nearly all the cells in a multicellular organism. Organisms that reproduce sexually form two kinds of cells, body cells and sex cells. In body cells of most organisms, similar chromosomes occur in pairs. Diploid cells are cells that have pairs of chromosomes.
Okay, so diploid cells. You need to understand that almost all cells in your bodies are diploid. Diploid cells contain two complete sets, or pairs, of chromosomes. When a body cell divides by the process of cell division and mitosis, each of the two resulting cells, which you remember from our last lesson are called daughter cells, have copies of the original cell's chromosomes. Okay, so let's go ahead and get our vocab word, diploid. Okay, write it down. Of most organisms, similar chromosomes occur in pairs. Diploid cells are cells that have pairs of chromosomes. Pairs of chromosomes. Make sure you're writing the term, please, so you can pause and write and then restart the video.
Chromosomes. Pairs of chromosomes that have genes for the same traits arranged in the same order are called homologous chromosomes. Because one chromosome is inherited from each parent, the chromosomes are not identical. For example, the kittens mentioned earlier in this lesson inherited a gene for orange fur color from their mother. They also inherited a gene for gray fur color from their father. So some kittens might be orange and some might be gray. Both genes for fur color are at the same place on homologous chromosomes, but they code for different colors. Different organisms have different numbers of chromosomes. Recall that diploid cells have pairs of chromosomes. Notice in Table 1 that human diploid cells have 23 pairs of chromosomes for a total of 46 chromosomes. A fruit fly diploid cell has 4 pairs of chromosomes and a rice diploid cell has 12 pairs. Having the correct number of chromosomes is very important. If a zygote has too many or too few chromosomes, it will not develop properly. For example, a genetic condition called Down syndrome occurs when a person has an extra copy of chromosome 21. A person with Down syndrome can have short stature, heart defects, or mental disabilities.
Okay, so let's take a look at this chart, this one right here. Okay, when we take a look, I have a question about this numbers here, the number of homologous pairs, and this number right here with all of those, the number of chromosomes. What can you conclude from this table about the relationship between the number of chromosomes, which is this, and the number of homologous chromosome pairs in an organism's body cell. Any of these right here. Okay, so if you take a look and you see 4 and 8, you see 12 and 24, you see 16 and 32, and so on with the rest of these. So what can you conclude about this table and the relationship between this one and this one, these numbers and these numbers? Okay, I'll give you a second. Okay, if you take a look at the number of homologous pairs, you will notice that this number here to become this number is doubled. The number of chromosomes, this number here, is always twice the number of these pairs. Remember, a pair is 2. So if you're looking at this pair of 4, if you multiply it by 2 because there are 4 pairs of 2 things, it makes 8. Okay? So all these numbers are doubled to produce these. The only exception to this pairing, twice as much, this one here, twice as much as this, would be in those cases where there's a disorder, such as Down syndrome, where cells have too many or too few chromosomes. So in those cases, when we have an instance of disorder, something's not right, then they are thrown off. Those numbers aren't always doubled. Okay, so with all of that, next definition. Homologous chromosomes. Pairs of chromosomes that have genes from the same traits arranged in the same order are called homologous. Homo, H-O-M-O, as a prefix meaning the same. Okay, make sure you're writing the definition. If you need to, make sure you're pausing. Okay, so we'll go on. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is to make that smaller, to bring this one up. We have some questions. Okay? You're to pick one question to answer. You answer it as you're writing, please, so that we have it already written down in your science journal. Okay, so you can pick from one of these 3. How many chromosomes do human body cells contain? The next one, what are homologous chromosomes? And the third one here, why are the chromosomes in a human diploid cell homologous or similar rather than identical? Okay, one of those 3, writing the question and your answer down in your science journal, please.
Haploid cells. Organisms that reproduce sexually also form egg and sperm cells, or sex cells. Sex cells have only one chromosome from each pair of chromosomes. Haploid cells are cells that have only one chromosome from each pair. Organisms produce sex cells using a special type of cell division called meiosis. In meiosis, one diploid cell divides and makes 4 haploid sex cells. Meiosis occurs only during the formation of sex cells. Reading check. How do diploid cells differ from haploid cells?
Okay, so you'll notice that I pulled the 2 definitions up. Make sure that you have them written in your science journal, please, both definitions. Haploid cells are cells that have only one chromosome from each pair. In the case of humans, the human sex cell, a male sperm, female egg, they have half of the information needed to produce a full baby. Meiosis is another one. Meiosis is one diploid cell dividing and making 4 haploid cells. Okay, so make sure you have those 2, this one and this one, in your science journal, please. Okay, so next I'm going to make this smaller, and I'm going to ask an all-important question. As you know, that's kind of my favorite thing to do. So bringing this question up. What is the purpose of meiosis? And the second one is, how do diploid cells differ from haploid cells? You get to pick one of those two to write down in your science journal and answer, please. Don't wait and bring it to class to answer it. Answer it as we go along. So right now, I'm asking you to pause the video, write the question, and answer the question to the best of your ability. Okay? You have to understand that the process of meiosis, which produces haploid cells, is vital in sexual reproduction. Okay? Vital in sexual reproduction. Okay, so make sure you've done one of those two questions. Okay, making them smaller. Okay, moving on.
The phases of meiosis. Next, you will read about the phases of meiosis. Many of the phases might seem familiar to you because they also occur during mitosis. Recall that mitosis and cytokinesis involve one division of the nucleus and the cytoplasm. Meiosis involves two divisions of the nucleus and the cytoplasm, called meiosis I and meiosis II. They result in 4 haploid cells with half the number of chromosomes as the original cell. When the number of chromosomes is reduced during cell division, it is called a reduction division.
Okay, so let's talk about word origin. We're going to talk about the term haploid. Haploid, believe it or not, means one. So how does the meaning of single relate to haploid? Okay, remember that single also means one, and haploid cells have only one chromosome from each pair of chromosomes. So when we talk about diploid, we talk about 2. Haploid, we talk about 1. Okay, so make sure you know the difference between the two, because that's going to be very important in your understanding. I need you also to understand the basic differences between meiosis and mitosis. In meiosis, the nucleus divides twice, as opposed to only one time does the nucleus divide in mitosis, as we saw in the last lesson. Okay, so I pulled up 2 questions for you, this one and this one, and I want you to answer one of them. So write one question down in your science journal and answer it, please. As we go, don't wait to answer it later. Do your best in answering. This is not a right or wrong. This is not me smacking your hands and saying, no, you got it wrong. This is me trying to figure out whether or not you understand. So please, go ahead. Answer one of those 2 questions in your science journal, writing the question and the answer, please. The first one, what are the 2 phases of meiosis called? And the second one, if there are 2 divisions of the nucleus, why aren't there 4 times as many chromosomes in sex cells? So think about it. Answer either that one or that one, writing them both down in your science journal, please.
Phases of meiosis I. A reproductive cell goes through interphase before beginning meiosis I, which is shown in Figure 2. During interphase, the reproductive cell grows and copies, or duplicates its chromosomes. Each duplicated chromosome consists of 2 sister chromatids joined together by a centromere. Number 1. Prophase I. In the first phase of meiosis I, duplicated chromosomes condense and thicken. Homologous chromosomes come together and form pairs. The membrane surrounding the nucleus breaks apart, and the nucleolus disappears. Number 2. Metaphase I. Homologous chromosome pairs line up along the middle of the cell. A spindle fiber attaches to each chromosome. Number 3. Anaphase I. Chromosome pairs separate and are pulled toward the opposite ends of the cell. Notice that the sister chromatids stay together. Number 4. Telophase I. A nuclear membrane forms around each group of duplicated chromosomes. The cytoplasm divides through cytokinesis, and 2 daughter cells form. Sister chromatids remain together.
Okay, so if you take a look, this is the information that was provided to you during mitosis. Okay? Except for a couple of things which happens at the end, which is down in here, this is the exact same information that we provided to you under mitosis. Prophase 1, which would be prophase normally in just mitosis. The membrane breaks apart, chromosomes condense, and form homologous pairs. Look, they're forming the pairs, just like the X with the centromere in the middle. The second one is metaphase. Homologous chromosomes line up along the center. Remember we talked about the center line? Okay? And in this case, the spindle fibers, which are the ones at the very ends of the cell, are attached to each chromosome. That's what the green lines are that's going across the circle. Okay, number 3, anaphase. Homologous chromosomes separate and they are pulled to the opposite ends towards the spindle fibers. So the pairs separate. That's where you're getting half of each. So you're getting a share of each one of these. And in this phase right here, moving on to telophase 1, the membrane forms around a set of chromosomes, which is what's going on right here. Each side has the membrane forming, and the cytoplasm divides. That's what's happening in the middle. You can sort of see that in the picture here. This is a for real one, a for real cell that's dividing. The dark parts here are those chromosomes pulled to the ends, and the darker part in the middle is the cytoplasm starting to split. Remember, as we talked last lesson, that nucleus divides first, and then the cytoplasm. So nucleus first, then the cytoplasm divides next. Okay, so you've seen all of this information. Okay, so what I need you to remember is that all of this that we just talked about, what happens before that, what happens before all of this is interphase. Interphase was something we talked about with the last lesson, and remember, interphase is what phase the cell stays in for the longest period of time. Remember the G1, the S, and the G2. That was interphase, if you remember. Okay, so the phase that happens before all of this process is interphase, during which chromosomes are duplicated. Remember, it duplicates the chromosomes. Okay, so next we're going to provide you with your questions. I want you to pick one of these 3 questions to write down, please, and answer in your science journal, making sure that you are answering as we go along, and it's only one question, okay? So you can choose from what makes up duplicated chromosomes, or the second one, what happens to the chromosomes in prophase 1, or the third one, this one right here. If prophase 1 did not occur, would anaphase 1 be possible? And you need to explain. So one of those 3, please write it in your science journal. Okay, so next we're going to do phases of meiosis 2. I'm going to bring up your chart so that you can see it. And then I'll put on the reading. Okay.
Phases of meiosis II. During meiosis II, the 2 cells formed previously go through a second division of the nucleus and the cytoplasm, as shown in Figure 2. This reduction division results in a haploid gamete or spore. Number 5. Prophase 2. Chromosomes are not copied again before prophase 2. They remain as condensed, thickened sister chromatids. The nuclear membrane breaks apart, and the nucleolus disappears in each cell. Number 6. Metaphase 2. The pairs of sister chromatids line up along the middle of the cell in single file. Number 7. Anaphase 2. The sister chromatids of each duplicated chromosome are pulled away from each other and move toward opposite ends of the cells. Number 8. Telophase 2. During the final phase of meiosis, telophase 2, A nuclear membrane forms around each set of chromatids, which are again called chromosomes. The cytoplasm divides through cytokinesis, and 4 haploid cells form. Key concept check. List the phases of meiosis in order.
Okay, so moving through this, remember that these two cells are the same two cells that formed with meiosis 1 or meiosis 1. Notice the red arrow coming from the other side there. And prophase 2, remember prophase 1 is very similar, except in this case it's working with the 2 cells and versus the 1. The nuclear membrane breaks apart. That's what's happening right here. Okay? Membrane in the middle. Okay, remember this is a cytoplasm. The membrane in the middle starts to break apart. There's your chromosomes on the inside. And we move to metaphase 2, where the sister chromatids line up. See, the sister chromatids are lining up in the middle, along the center of the cell. Okay? Moving that one down to this one, which is anaphase 2, where the sister chromatids now, if you notice, the X is not an X any longer, and the centromere has disappeared. Sister chromatids of each chromosome begin to separate and are pulled to opposite ends of the cell. They're being pulled by the spindle fibers. Okay, that's these green little lines here. The spindle fibers are pulling apart what's going on right there and there. And each side is getting half of the sister chromatid. Okay, moving down to this one, into telophase. Okay, remember that in telophase, the nuclear membrane forms around each chromatid. That's right here. These right here. They're forming around all of them. Each one of them has a nuclear membrane around it. Okay? And the cytoplasm divides. Notice the cytoplasm is now starting to divide. So from 2, we get 4. All right? So that is the second phase. You need to understand that in meiosis 2, it involves the same phases as meiosis 1, but without any duplication of the chromosomes. So they're not duplicated because it's already happened. All they're doing is separating. Okay, so now I get to ask the all-important questions. Let me make this small. Okay, all-important questions. You get to pick one of the 3. Excuse me, one of the 3 to write down. First one, of course, if you notice, is the key concept question, so eventually you're going to have to answer this one. List the phases of meiosis in order. Reading check question, compare telophase 1 and telophase 2. And the third one, what happens to the haploid cells that are produced by the process of meiosis? So go ahead and pick one of those 3. Write it in your science journal and answer that question. Please, again, remember, have it already written down so that when you get to class, you have the answer. Okay, thank you.
Why is meiosis important? Meiosis forms sex cells with the correct haploid number of chromosomes. This maintains the correct diploid number of chromosomes in organisms when sex cells join. Meiosis also creates genetic variation by producing haploid cells.
Okay, so why is meiosis important? You need to understand that meiosis makes it possible to maintain the diploid number of chromosomes in organisms' body cells. It's also creating genetic variations within the species. So, for my benefit, please, could you please pick one of these 2? And again, you'll notice key concept check. So you're going to have to eventually answer this one anyway. But pick one of these 2 and answer it in your science journal, please. Why is meiosis important? Okay, the other one you could answer is, how does meiosis create genetic variations? Okay, so one of those 2 questions, please write it and answer it in your science journal. All right, making this smaller. Okay, moving along.
Maintaining diploid cells. Recall that diploid cells have pairs of chromosomes. Meiosis helps to maintain diploid cells in offspring by making haploid sex cells. When haploid sex cells join together during fertilization, they make a diploid zygote or fertilized egg. The zygote then divides by mitosis and cell division and creates a diploid organism. Figure 3 illustrates how the diploid number is maintained in ducks.
Okay, so using this photo, we see the female duck that has 80 chromosomes in the diploid cell, and the male duck who has 80 chromosomes in the diploid cell. They go through meiosis and they produce an egg. The egg was a haploid cell that has 40 chromosomes. The sperm is a haploid cell that has 40 chromosomes. Remember, when the two are fertilized and they come together in the fertilized egg, which is the zygote, 40 combines with 40 to make 80 chromosomes, a diploid cell. Okay, di meaning two, putting two together to form one, forming the combination of 80, which produces a baby duck that has diploid cells with 80 chromosomes. So I'm hoping you understand that one, okay? Sex cells join and produce a fertilized egg just like this. Sex cells joining, producing a fertilized egg with paired homologous pairs, which is the chromosomes. We're pairing them together to make 80 chromosomes. All right? I hope that's not confusing, but that is how the process works. So now, with that, I would like for you to go ahead and write one of these two down and answer it, please. What is the name of a fertilized egg? Or the second one is a zygote, haploid, or diploid cell. Is a zygote a haploid or a diploid cell? And please explain.
Creating haploid cells. The result of meiosis is haploid sex cells. This helps maintain the correct number of chromosomes in each generation of offspring. Haploid cell formation is important because it allows for genetic variation through a process called crossing over. During this process, chromosomal segments are exchanged between a pair of homologous chromosomes. The resulting sex cells contain new combinations of genes. The genetic makeup of offspring is a combination of chromosomes from two sex cells. Variation in the sex cells results in more genetic variation in the next generation. Key concept check. Why is meiosis important?
Okay, so now I want, just to make sure, I want you to make sure you know these essential points of meiosis, and that you know for a fact it creates sex cells, each one with one set of unpaired chromosomes. Unpaired means it's not together, it is separated, it is unpaired. Okay? I want you to write one of these three questions in your science journal, please, and answer it. What is the result of meiosis? The second one, what is the result of variations in an organism's sex cells? Or the third one, how is genetic variation produced in sex cells? One of those three. Answer it to the best of your ability, please. Not.
How do mitosis and meiosis differ? Sometimes it's hard to remember the differences between mitosis and meiosis. Use Table 2 to review these processes. During mitosis and cell division, a body cell and its nucleus divide once and produce two identical cells. These processes are important for growth and repair or replacement of damaged tissue. Some organisms reproduce by these processes. The two daughter cells produced by mitosis and cell division have the same genetic information. During meiosis, a reproductive cell and its nucleus divide twice and produce 4 cells, 2 pairs of identical haploid cells. Each cell has half the number of chromosomes as the original cell. Meiosis happens in the reproductive organs of multicellular organisms. Meiosis forms sex cells used for sexual reproduction. Reading check. How many cells are produced during mitosis? During meiosis?
So let's take a look at this chart, okay? It is talking about the comparison of types of cell division, meiosis and mitosis. Okay, the number of chromosomes in the parent cell, okay, it's diploid. Okay, the number of chromosomes in the parent cell is diploid, meaning what? Di, meaning 2. Okay, type of parent cell, what type of the cell is this happening in? Well, if you look at mitosis, it's happening in body cells. If you're looking at meiosis, it's happening in the reproductive cells. The number of divisions of the nucleus in mitosis is 1, which we've talked about. In meiosis, it's 2. Remember, it goes through the process twice. That nucleus divides 2 times. The number of daughter cells produced in mitosis is 2. Remember, in the pie chart that we had on our test, the pie chart divided and 2 daughter cells came from the parent cell, and the parent cell disappeared because it gave everything it had and split to 2. In meiosis, however, that happens twice. So you end up with 4 daughter cells being produced. Not 2, but 4 because it happens 2 times. Chromosome number in the daughter cell would be in mitosis, it is the diploid cell because it's a body cell, it's reproducing itself. Okay, in meiosis, it's producing the haploid being single cells because it's reproductive. Remember, in the reproductive cell, you have a female cell and you have the male cell, and both have half of the chromosomes in it, so when they're fertilized or combined between the two, it produces the double, okay, or the total number of chromosomes. So a reproductive cell has half or haploid cells. Its function in the meiosis forms sperm and eggs. Okay, mitosis, growth, repair, and reproduction of some types. Okay, remember those we talked about? This is new. Okay, so one last group of questions for you, please. Okay. Which of the 2 processes produce sex cells? You're writing one of these 3 questions and you're answering them, please, in your science journal. Second one, of course, is the reading check question. How many cells are produced during mitosis? Then how many are produced during meiosis? The third question, why does mitosis produce daughter cells with genetic information identical to that of the original cell? So you're picking one of these 3 questions to write in your science journal, please, and answering before you get to class. I've gotten a lot of excuses lately about how I didn't understand the question, so I just wrote the answer, or just wrote the question and not the answer. I need you to attempt to answer the questions, please. I've cut them more than in half by having you answer just one of the 3 or 2 questions that are listed. Please answer the question. Okay, I will take 1 or 2 where you say, I don't understand, but please answer the questions.
Advantages of sexual reproduction. Did you ever wonder why a brother and a sister might not look alike? The answer is sexual reproduction. The main advantage of sexual reproduction is that offspring inherit half their DNA from each parent. Offspring are not likely to inherit the same DNA from the same parents. Different DNA means that each offspring has a different set of traits. This results in genetic variation among the offspring. Key concept check. Why is sexual reproduction beneficial? Genetic variation. As you just read, genetic variation exists among humans. You can look at your friends to see genetic variation. Genetic variation occurs in all organisms that reproduce sexually. Consider the plants shown in Figure 4. The plants are members of the same species, but they have different traits, such as the ability to resist disease. The inheritance of one trait does not influence the inheritance of another trait. This trend is called independent assortment. Independent assortment means genetic variation can vary widely. These differences might be an advantage if the environment changes. This helps some individuals survive unusually harsh conditions, such as drought or severe cold.
Okay, so make sure that you understand that sexual reproduction creates great diversity in species. Remember, the term diversity means difference. They're different in every species. Okay? So pulling out our information. 2 questions. Key concept question. Why is sexual reproduction beneficial? Okay, the second one. Would it be possible for 2 siblings who are not identical twins to receive the same set of genes from their parents? You are writing one of these 2 down, please. Answering the question, okay, please, and your science journal.
Selective breeding. Did you know that broccoli, kohlrabi, kale, and cabbage all descended from one type of mustard plant? It's true. More than 2,000 years ago, farmers noticed that some mustard plants had different traits, such as larger leaves or bigger flower buds. The farmers started to choose which traits they wanted by selecting certain plants to reproduce and grow. For example, some farmers chose only the plants with the biggest flowers and stems and planted their seeds. Over time, the offspring of these plants became what we know today as broccoli, shown in Figure 5. This process is called selective breeding, or artificial selection. Artificial selection is used to develop many types of plants and animals with desirable traits. It is another example of the benefits of sexual reproduction.
Okay. Virtually all of the fruits and vegetables we buy at the supermarket are the result of selective breeding. The goal of selective breeding, which is also done with animals, is to produce organisms with desired characteristics. Many generations of selective breeding can produce varieties of fruits and vegetables that bear little resemblance to the ancestor species or the beginning species. Okay, so it's very common for us to have in front of us something that's gone through the selective breeding process. Okay, so now I want you to go ahead, pick one of the 2 questions that I have here, please. Write it in your science journal. How long ago did the selective breeding of broccoli, kale, cabbage, and kohlrabi, which is this one here, I was looking for the picture, kohlrabi. Probably don't know that one, but we do know cabbage, broccoli, and kale. How long ago did the selective breeding process begin? Second question would be this one. What part are broccoli, kohlrabi, kale, and cabbage all descending from? What plant? What plant are they all descended from? Pick one of those 2. Answer the question, please. Writing the question and the answer.
Disadvantages of sexual reproduction. Although sexual reproduction produces more genetic variation, it does have some disadvantages. Sexual reproduction takes time and energy. Organisms have to grow and develop until they are mature enough to produce sex cells. Then the organisms have to form sex cells, either eggs or sperm. Before they can reproduce, organisms usually have to find mates. Searching for a mate can take a long time and requires energy. The search for a mate might also expose individuals to predators, diseases, or harsh environmental conditions. In addition, sexual reproduction is limited by certain factors. For example, fertilization cannot take place during pregnancy, which can last as long as 2 years in some mammals. Reading check. What are the disadvantages of sexual reproduction?
Okay, so I do need you to understand that sexual reproduction includes advantages and disadvantages. So we just talked about, or just heard about some of the disadvantages. I want you to pick one of these two questions, write it in your science journal, and answer the question, please. The first one, what are the disadvantages of sexual reproduction? The second one, can you think of another disadvantage related to chromosomal recombinations? Chromosomal recombinations. Recombinations means different ways that they're organized. Okay? So one of these two, please write it in your science journal. And just so you know, that would be the end of the information. However, I do want you to answer the questions. So the questions at the end of the lesson are coming up. You're writing the questions and the answers, please. Okay, when you're doing this information, this is the vocab, but I want you to use the term egg, sperm, and zygote in a sentence. Distinguish between haploid and diploid cells, and define the following. So you're going to do all of the questions 1 through 7. I want you to draw the chart, please. Draw the chart. With number 6, all you have to do, with number 6 here, all you have to do is write which letter is the correct answer. Okay? That is the information. I hope you learned quite a bit with this, and we will find out in class.